I mean, it's been successful. The fact that we saw a 10% tariff rate instead of 25% is a recognition, I think, that energy resources, whether it's oil and gas or critical minerals or electricity, are vital components of U.S. success. That's what we're arguing, is that if you want to be able to exert American influence internationally, geopolitically, through oil exports, you need Canadian oil to be able to backfill so that American consumers are protected. We very successfully made the case that there were a multitude of refineries that would shut down potentially with 25% tariffs, and it would certainly cause an increase in the cost of fuel. I just saw a story today that even 10% tariffs are going to increase the cost of gasoline by 30 cents a gallon in some jurisdictions. I think that message was heard loud and clear. It could have potentially been almost 3 times higher than that. So I would say that we've been able to be successful on making some of those arguments. I think we can make them for food. I think we can make them for intermediate products, but it does take us working with our American counterparts in business as well as in various levels of elected office to press the point for us. I have confidence that we can be successful on that. Just look at what happened today with a reprieve on auto tariffs. I think the more the stock market responds in a negative fashion, the more consumers demonstrate that they're going to be hurt, the more industry voices that speak up. I think that that's going to get us to a place where we can get to where I think we really need to be, which is renegotiating the Canada-U.S. Free Trade Agreement and dealing with some of these irritants so that both countries can get on to other issues.
I think I'm a little bit confused, Derek, because just the other day, President Trump said he wants to revive the Keystone XL pipeline, which is dead and buried. That grave is cold. But, Trump knows that's going to bring in 800,000 barrels a day. That's a lot. That's what, about $20 billion, just roughly off the top of my head. That's so much dough. So on the one hand, he's saying, I want more oil sands oil. But on the other hand, he's saying he wants to put a 10% tariff on it. I'm getting a little bit of whiplash, and I'm a super fan of Trump, by the way. I find it hard to understand.
I'm not sure there is understanding it. There's the mad dog theory of Trump, that he's just throwing us off and softening us up. But I'm not seeing any strategy in this. I'd like to think he, this is some art of the deal thing where he's trying to throw us through a loop and soften us up. But I'm not seeing how this works here. So it's not good for American consumers. It's not good for American refineries. It's not good for American energy independence, if you're defining that as North American energy independence, at least. It doesn't square with Keystone XL. I'm just not seeing any strategy here. And, I'm sympathetic to Trump on some issues, but I'm having a hard time squaring it with those who just think this is a part of some brilliant strategy. I'm not convinced it's a part of a brilliant strategy at this point. You have to wonder if it's just kind of going off half-cocked on a bunch of different fronts as he's trying to reorder global and North American trade. I'm not convinced that there's any sound strategy in what he's trying to achieve with at least with Alberta Oil. I can see what he might be trying to achieve with the auto sector, and that's obviously a bad thing for Windsor and the Ontario auto manufacturers. You could at least see where he might be trying to go, but I can't see where he's trying to go, at least with the Alberta oil sands.
One thing that is very clear is his disdain for Justin Trudeau. Again, he's yanking his chain, calling him governor instead of prime minister. He's done a couple of tweets or other social media posts where he has suggested that Trudeau loves this fight because it'll give him a chance to not retire and, in fact, to run again. I think there's a possibility of that. I think Mark Carney and the Liberal Party have in some ways moved on from that. I think Trump is enjoying fighting with Trudeau, and Trump's sort of a scrappy guy. He gives people mean nicknames and he roughs them up a bit. And then afterwards, he makes up with them. If you think about everyone from Ron DeSantis to Marco Rubio to even J.D. Vance, they were all people who used to be his foes. Now they're his buddies, but they all went through sort of a bruising middle step. I don't quite understand what's going on, but my thesis is if Trump wants to get back at Trudeau, there are other ways to do it without pushing away Canadian oil, which is as Danielle Smith just put there, so essential for America's success.
Yeah, and I don't think this is going to be Trudeau. I mean, there was a window where Trudeau may have used this to call a snap election and circumvent the Liberal leadership race. We are so close to the Liberal leadership race at this point that no, that's not in the cards. Although it might be a fair accusation that Trudeau was using this to help improve the political chances of the Liberal Party. I think there's been evidence of that in the polls, although the polls are drunk. They're so all over the place. But there's at least a substantial body of polling evidence that the Liberals have had a recovery riding this kind of postmodern nationalist wave. If Trump wanted to really agitate Trudeau, he would exempt Alberta oil and maybe even other very heavy Alberta products, because then it would create even more cleavages between Alberta and the West on the one hand, and the federal government in Ottawa and Trudeau on the other, tempting Trudeau to put on an export tax or embargo the United States or something like that. If it looked like Ontario and Quebec were the ones getting hit, and Alberta was getting an easy ride. So I think if Trump was playing more strategic, he's doing that a little bit by putting only 10% tariff on Canadian oil, primarily from Alberta. That is creating tension that the Trudeau government's gonna be like, well, why are they only getting 10 when we're getting stuffed with 25 on most central Canadian products? But again, it's just not making a ton of sense what's coming from Trump on this one.
Western Canada has some really valuable things. Danielle Smith listed some of them there. Saskatchewan has a lot of potash, which is important for agriculture and other things. Mm-hmm. Of course, Alberta has a lot of oil. One of the things that gets me is that Liberals from Eastern Canada who disparage resource industries, who say we have to stop them, we have to transition away from them, who hate the oil sands and frankly hate mining, suddenly want to conscript the mining industry and the oil industry to be the battering ram in this fight. I see Catherine McKenna, the disgraced former environment minister who never saw an oil barrel that she didn't hate, now calling on Alberta to take one for the team. Let me play a quick clip of Danielle Smith talking about this threat of export taxes where Canada would either tax or stop exports. I'd love your thoughts on this. Take a look at this from yesterday where Danielle Smith sort of had her dukes up, not towards Trump, but towards Trudeau. Take a look.
What is Alberta willing to do if the federal government does put in some type of export tax or decide to cut off energy to the U.S.?
Well, an export tax would be a violation of the 1977 Pipeline Treaty. We've committed to not tax the content of energy products going down to the United States. And I would hope that the federal government would abide by Alberta's wishes not to unfairly tax our jurisdiction. I know what an export tax would mean. $150 billion worth of product taxed at 25% would generate $40 billion for Ottawa. That would then be spent on Ottawa's priorities, and I have absolutely no interest. You will notice that when Doug talked about adding a surtax, he wasn't talking about Ottawa adding an export tax that then would be collected by Ottawa to be decided where it was going to be spent by Ottawa. He's adding that tax so that he has the ability to keep those dollars in his own province to be able to defray any of the damage on his own people. So I would say it is not on. It's not been on from the beginning. And you do not demonstrate that you are a reliable supplier of energy products to our most important trading partner by acting in that kind of erratic way. So there's no circumstance under which I would support an export tax.
I'm glad to hear her say that. I don't know if she has the political, legal, constitutional, legislative horses to stop Trudeau if he wanted to do that. What do you make of it? Do you think that's an idle threat by Trudeau? I mean, cutting off oil to America would be tantamount to a declaration of war. Putting an export tax on them, I don't know. I think that would inflame things. It would do a lot more destruction than reconstruction. What do you think?
Well, embargoing oil exports to the United States is just simply not possible. I think a lot of people have seen the map by now, a map that 99% of Canadians had never seen until a few weeks ago, showing that the oil sands, these pipelines from Alberta, they don't just go straight into America. Our pipelines going to Eastern Canada. they don't actually go to Eastern Canada. They go through Saskatchewan, they go to the United States, and they come around, and they eventually come back up through the Great Lakes. So if Ottawa was to turn off the taps to America, the Eastern bastards would be making the Eastern bastards freeze in the dark. They simply couldn't do it. So I'm actually, in a very weird way, I'm kind of glad we didn't build Energy East, because it means Ottawa has no leverage to actually turn off oil exports to the United States, which is why they're not really talking about that. They're talking about export tax. If they did, it's tantamount, an oil embargo against the United States is tantamount to a declaration of war against America. An export tax is tantamount to a declaration of war against Alberta. Mm-hmm. And there really is no length to which Alberta should not go to resist it. I've been resistant against the whole faux Team Canada idea, because it's not really been Team Canada, it's Team Ontario, Quebec. What's about protecting them? I think Smith was right to take a pretty diplomatic approach to this. There's been partial successes to that, which I think it's at least in part why we have a 10% tariff on oil, not a 25%. But the nice diplomatic approach has unfortunately failed. I've been supportive of her softer, more diplomatic approach here, and it's had partial success, but it's obviously not gone far enough here. But if Ottawa was to go this route, I'd be willing to take some pretty extreme measures to resist it. It would be, as I said, a tantamount to a declaration of economic war against Alberta, and there is absolutely nothing and no length to which we should go to resist it. At that point, Ottawa becomes the much greater threat to Alberta than the United States is if they went that route.